And Louis is now ready to share some information with us on home-biased credit allocations.
Yeah, right, thank you. Okay, right, so thank you very much. So this is a joint paper with Ivan Lim. So in this paper, we are trying to uncover a new bias in bank lending policies, okay? And then we later on show that this bias has an economically important real effect on the local economies. All right, so I'm sure everyone in this room agree with me that the allocation of bank credit is extremely important. Okay, so its availability affects how company invests, affecting how family settles and create new job opportunities. Okay, so given the importance, of course, this is important for banks to make sure that their credit is equally available to all the network. All right, so in line with this, we have a few slogans from a couple of banks. We are trying to committed to serve every community under our network. Then we have another bank which basically saying that we are proud to make life better for everyone. Okay, so whether this is true or not, in this paper we are actually documenting a systematic bank level bias in the lending policies. Okay, and then we show that this actually has an important real effect to the local economy. All right, so in a nutshell, we basically showing that banks are actually make more lending and open more branches in the areas that are closer to the bank CEO hometown. All right, so this is the bias in our paper, and then we are trying to interpret these results, and then we find that this is actually in line with a familiarity bias. Okay, so the CEO here have an emotional attachment to their hometown community, and therefore they are more likely to lend to contribute back to their hometown. And quite surprisingly, we do not find much information on the information advantage or agency motivations, as I will show you later. Okay, so what's the bottom line? We show that counties that are lucky enough to have a greater exposure to hometown biases. In other words, counties that produce more bank CEO, in fact, have better access to credit and therefore better economic developments. Okay, so in a sense, our paper shows evidence on credit inequality, but across different geography. And that's one channel of credit inequality. Okay, so perhaps the importance of looking at home buyers in our context is that we show home buyers actually affect a company production outputs. Okay, and in this sense, the outputs is bank credit to the real economy. All right, so and therefore it has real effect. Right, so we actually hand collected information on the county where bank CEO was born from multiple databases, and we actually get up to 60% of this information across all public bank CEO between this period. Okay, and then this is actually a significant improvement over the prior literature, which minimizes all concerns about self-selections bias. All right. Here, by lending, we are looking at mortgage loan coming from the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act. Okay, and the key advantage why we are looking at home mortgage is that it has information on the borrower locations. Okay, so where the location of the houses where the mortgage applicants want to buy a house, and this is important because it allows us to capture the geographical dimensions in a bank lending policies. Okay, we have other important information on borrower characteristics as well as loan characteristics to control in the paper. Okay. Right, so this is the empirical specifications, but then perhaps the most important ingredients in our model is the inclusions of bank fixed effects as well as the county times year fixed effect. Okay, so I will go through the empirical strategies later, but what is important to emphasize in this slide is that we basically compare lending of the same bank in two otherwise identical locations, but only different by the locations to the bank CEO hometown, okay? And that's the key ingredient of our paper, okay? So I will illustrate how we test it later, okay? So this is Mr. James. I'm hoping he's not in the audience. He's the CEO of PNC Financial Service for the past 13 years. And then he has his home over here in Cleveland, Ohio, okay? So he's working for PNC Financial Service in Philadelphia. And we know that PNC have branches over the United States. And what we are essentially trying to do is to compare lending of PNC branch here in I think in Cook County, Ohio, which is only 50 kilometers away from the CEO hometown, with lending of PNC branch over here in Kings County, Washington, which is nearly 3,000 kilometers away, okay? And our hypothesis is simple, that since this branch is located closer to the CEO hometown, they will get more preferential lendings and so on, okay? All right. Importantly, we also control for the distance between a particular branch and the bank HQ, because this is important that usually branch located closer to the HQ will get more attention and so on, all right? And another important source of variations, again, hoping that he's not here, he's replacing James later on in 2013, and thankfully they have two different hometown locations, okay? So after 13, the CEO hometown shipped from somewhere in Ohio to Kansas. This will produce a change to any given branch and the CEO hometown. And this is another important source of variations in our model, okay? And then we will use that as another source of variation. All right, so the finding is simple, okay? So what we are really showing here is that we find that proximity to the CEO hometown, okay? Counties located closer to the CEO hometown, enjoying a faster growing mortgage loan, higher mortgage approval rate, and more branch opening, okay? So there is some preliminary evidence that there is a systematic difference in areas that are closer to the hometown. And it is important that we already control for the distance to HQ. All right, the effect is economically important. So one standard deviation, which is around 1,000 kilometers, is associated with up to nearly 8% higher mortgage approval rate. Okay, so it is an economically important finding. All right, so next we want to explore how CEOs actually influence mortgage lending, because we know that mortgage lending tends to be locally met, and it is natural that I'm sure people will ask, how do CEOs actually influence this, okay? So intuitively, CEO can influence local lending by, for instance, open more branches and hiring their acquaintances as local branch manager. Okay, so through that, they can influence local lending process. Another channel is through communications. So I'm sure CEO occasionally intervene the operations of local banks, local branch, and therefore they can convey their lending preferences to local branch manager as well. So that's how it takes place. Okay. Although it's intuitive, but then it is very difficult to come up with a direct empirical test to pin down on this. Okay. So as a result, we resort to an indirect test by looking at changes in bank lending in response to a natural disaster event. Okay, and then this is a test where we can sort of pin down our CEO influence on local lending. The intuition is that following a natural disaster event, then clearly there will be an increasing in demand for local bank credits. Okay, and the problem is that banks do not always have available liquidity to respond to local needs in following a disaster. So CEO have to be put in a difficult position to respond, to decide whether they want to reallocate credit or not. Okay, so if our CEO is systematically home buyers, then we should expect that they will increase lending if the disaster is happening to their own hometowns. Okay, so this is a test that we're trying to pin down an influence of the CEO on local lending. All right, so what we show is that the preferential in lending tilted toward our CEO hometown become particularly stronger when the hometown was hit by a severe natural disaster. Okay, so the decision is likely to be made by the CEO because it's emergent and it's expensive for the banks as well, and it also shows that our CEO is more likely to favor the hometown. Okay, so this is our indirect test on this. All right, so we're also trying to explore, this is perhaps more important, we are trying to explore a little bit more on the underlying economic explanations of our results. Okay, so I'm sure that this is something that we think of first. Information advantage. Okay, so perhaps the tendency to lend more near hometown can be driven by the fact that our CEO simply have better information about the local economic conditions in their hometown, and therefore they are more likely to take advantage of this. Okay, so if this is the case, then if we observe more hometown lending, then this should lead to superior bank outcomes. Okay. The second possibility is that the hometown lending could be driven by agency motivations. Okay, so the CEO simply take advantage of their shareholders, and then they tend to implement policies more to lend more in their hometown to gain recognitions and local directorships and so on. Okay, so if this is the case, then we should observe hometown lending to lead to inferior bank outcomes. And finally, this is our winning hypothesis that we're simply expecting that hometown lending is driven by a familiarity bias. Okay, so we are social animals, and therefore we have our emotional attachment. And there's a large literature showing that emotional attachment leads people to invest time and resources in their home, in their place of familiarities. Okay, so under this hypothesis, then we should not expect any influence of hometown lending on bank outcomes. All right, so we have three key hypotheses. So what we are trying to find in this paper is that we find that there's completely no correlation between the amount of hometown lending and any of the bank bottom line. Okay, so it doesn't lead bank to increase total lending, it doesn't lead to more negative loans, it doesn't affect shareholder returns, and it doesn't affect bank profitability. Okay, so there's no correlation detected at all. And therefore, this sort of is against the information advantage and agency consideration. Okay, so we have been trying to run the additional analysis on this on the direct loan level outcome, and then we are getting some interesting results. But then I'm not ready to show these results first. Okay, and then again, our loan level analysis is also consistent with this. Right. So finally, we also have some additional interesting results. We find that the hometown lendings is actually stronger for a CEO who completed the undergraduate degree in the birth state. Okay, so these people tend to spend more time in their hometown, and therefore they are more likely to develop a stronger attachment to their hometown. We find that although we are not being able to observe the direct personality trait of the CEO, but then we resort to looking at it by basing it on the CEO cultural heritage. Okay, so we find that CEO who have cultural heritage place a greater emphasis on collectivism, patriotism, selflessness. Those who care more about the community tend to exhibit this hometown bias more. And then finally, we find that the effects are stronger for marginalized mortgage applicants. Okay, so non-white, female, and the poor applicants, in fact, get better better and more likely to get this hometown lending. And then this is actually the evidence against the information and agency consideration. Okay, so in the last 30 seconds, we also look at the aggregate effect of hometown biases on local economic outcome. Okay, so we find that in the counties that have a greater exposure to hometown favoritism, okay, tends to have better economic conditions and lower unemployment data in the long run. And therefore, we show that this is actually evidence of credit inequality. Okay, yeah. So thank you.